Vera stood a few steps away, her face calm, a soft smile resting on her lips as she looked at her husband and the woman beside him. To anyone watching, she might have seemed peaceful, even happy. What no one could have guessed was that behind that smile lived a story so deep, so carefully hidden, that it would soon change everything. Her husband and his lover certainly didn't suspect a thing. They believed they had already won. For years, Vera had been the perfect wife. Quiet, attentive, never demanding too much. She supported her husband's ambitions, managed the home, and built her world around his comfort. When he started coming home late, she didn't ask questions. When his phone was always locked, she didn't snoop. When the warmth in his voice faded, she blamed time, stress, routine, anything but betrayal. Or at least, that's what he believed. In truth, Vera had noticed everything. The unfamiliar perfume on his jacket. The way he suddenly cared about his appearance. The new excuses that didn't quite make sense. She felt the ache of realization slowly settle into her chest, heavy but quiet. She cried alone at night, learned to breathe through the pain, and then, little by little, something inside her shifted. The tears stopped. The sadness hardened into clarity. She didn't confront him. She didn't beg or accuse. Instead, she watched. She listened. She remembered who she was before she had made him the center of her universe. And in that silence, she began to prepare. The woman he was seeing believed she had won a prize. He told her stories about an unhappy marriage, about a wife who no longer understood him. He painted himself as a victim, trapped and misunderstood. She listened, sympathized, and fell in love with the version of him he carefully constructed. Neither of them thought about Vera beyond the role he assigned her, a weak, dependent woman who would be devastated if she ever learned the truth. That assumption was their greatest mistake. Vera started rebuilding her life quietly. She returned to old interests she had once abandoned. She reconnected with people who made her feel seen and valued. She educated herself, learned about finances, legal rights, and possibilities she had never considered before. Each small step restored a piece of her confidence. Each day, her smile became more genuine, not because she was happy with the situation, but because she knew she was no longer powerless. One evening, fate arranged a moment that would expose everything. Vera saw them together in public, her husband and his lover, laughing freely, careless, convinced they were invisible. She didn't turn away. She didn't hide. She stood there, watching them with that same calm smile. They didn't notice her. They couldn't imagine that the woman they had dismissed was standing so close, fully aware, fully awake. That was the moment Vera knew she was ready. What followed was not a dramatic confrontation filled with shouting and tears. Vera chose dignity over chaos. She gathered facts, documents, proof. She spoke to professionals, made plans, and ensured that every decision she made protected her future. She understood that revenge fueled by anger burns fast and leaves ashes, but justice built on patience lasts. When she finally spoke to her husband, her voice was steady. There were no accusations, no hysteria, just truth. She told him she knew. Not just about the affair, but about the lies, the manipulation, the disrespect. For the first time, he saw her not as the silent woman he had underestimated, but as someone strong and unshakable. The look on his face was confusion mixed with fear. This was not the reaction he had expected. The lover, too, was unprepared. She had imagined a dramatic scene where Vera would cry or plead. Instead, she faced a woman who was calm, composed, and strangely kind. Vera didn't insult her or compete with her. She simply stated that a relationship built on deception always carries a cost, and that cost eventually arrives for everyone. The truth unraveled quickly after that. Lies collided, promises lost their shine. The man who had seemed so confident suddenly found himself standing alone, forced to confront the consequences of his choices. The lover realized that the future she had imagined was fragile, built on half-truths and borrowed trust. Vera walked away not as a victim, but as someone reborn. She didn't need applause or sympathy. Her strength came from knowing that she had honored herself. She had faced betrayal without losing her humanity. She had chosen growth over bitterness. Life after betrayal was not magically easy. There were moments of loneliness, doubt, and grief for the years she had lost. But there was also freedom. Freedom to make choices without fear. Freedom to rediscover joy on her own terms. Freedom to smile, not as a mask, but as a reflection of inner peace. Over time, Vera's life filled with new meaning, new goals, new connections. She learned that love should never require silence or self-erasure. She learned that trust, once broken, reveals truths that can either destroy or liberate. She chose liberation. As for her husband and the woman he thought he loved, they learned a lesson too late. They learned that underestimating a quiet person is dangerous. That a smile doesn't always mean ignorance. That sometimes, the calmest person in the room is the one who knows exactly what is coming. Vera's story is not about revenge. It's about awakening. About the moment a person realizes their worth and refuses to live in shadows any longer. It's a reminder that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it simply smiles, and walks away. And even now, when people look back and wonder how she endured it all with such grace, they still don't fully understand one thing: Vera was never weak. She was patient. And patience, when paired with self-respect, can change the course of a life forever. After Vera walked away, the world didn't suddenly become bright and easy. The silence of her new life was unfamiliar, sometimes frightening. Mornings felt different without routine conversations that had long ago lost meaning. Evenings were quieter, and there were moments when memories tried to pull her back into doubt. But unlike before, she no longer ran from those feelings. She allowed herself to feel them, to understand them, and then to let them pass. Her husband, meanwhile, was unraveling in ways he never expected. The certainty he once had vanished. The woman he believed would bring excitement and happiness into his life began to see him differently. Without the thrill of secrecy, without the image of being a rescuer from a broken marriage, he was just a man carrying baggage and unresolved guilt. Arguments started over small things: plans, money, expectations. The fantasy cracked, and reality seeped in. Vera didn't watch this collapse with satisfaction. She didn't stalk their lives or seek updates. What surprised her most was how little she cared. The anger she once feared would consume her had transformed into something quieter and stronger: indifference. And indifference, she learned, was the true opposite of love. She focused instead on building a life that felt honest. She rearranged her home, not just physically but emotionally. Objects that reminded her of compromise and silence were replaced with things that reflected her taste and identity. She took long walks, learned to enjoy her own company, and rediscovered how it felt to make decisions without asking permission or seeking approval. One day, she enrolled in a course she had once dreamed of taking but never had the courage to pursue. Sitting in a classroom again, surrounded by people who knew nothing about her past, felt strangely liberating. She was no longer someone's wife, no longer defined by betrayal. She was simply Vera, a woman learning, growing, moving forward. Slowly, people began to notice the change in her. Friends who had drifted away returned, drawn by a new light in her presence. Conversations deepened. Laughter came easier. Vera wasn't pretending to be strong, she was becoming strong through experience. Every challenge she overcame reinforced a simple truth: she could rely on herself. There were moments, of course, when the past knocked unexpectedly. A familiar song, a place she hadn't visited in years, a shared memory that surfaced without warning. In those moments, her chest tightened, and for a brief second, she wondered how things might have been if honesty had come sooner. But she no longer lingered there. She understood that some questions don't need answers to lose their power. Her ex-husband tried to reach out more than once. At first with apologies, then with confusion, and finally with regret. He spoke about mistakes, about feeling lost, about missing what they had. Vera listened once, quietly, without interruption. When he finished, she thanked him for his honesty and told him something that surprised even herself: she had forgiven him. Not because he deserved it, but because she deserved peace. That conversation marked a turning point. She realized forgiveness was not about reopening doors, it was about closing them gently, without anger. She walked away lighter, no longer carrying the weight of resentment. As time passed, new opportunities appeared, some small, some life-changing. Vera accepted a job offer that challenged her, pushed her beyond comfort, and rewarded her independence. For the first time in years, she felt proud not of what she had endured, but of what she was creating. She also learned to set boundaries. Clear, calm, unapologetic boundaries. She no longer explained herself excessively or tolerated disrespect disguised as familiarity. This new version of Vera didn't need to prove her worth. She knew it. Love, too, returned to her life, but not in the way she expected. It came first as self-respect, then as kindness from unexpected places. When she eventually met someone new, she approached the connection without fear or urgency. She understood now that love should add to life, not replace it. That partnership should feel safe, not uncertain. And if it ever stopped feeling that way, she trusted herself to walk away again. The woman who once smiled silently at betrayal now smiled for a different reason. Her smile carried experience, wisdom, and freedom. People often mistook her calmness for softness, just as they had before. But Vera knew the truth. She had walked through betrayal and emerged whole. Looking back, she no longer saw those years as wasted. They were lessons, painful, yes, but transformative. They taught her resilience, patience, and the value of listening to her inner voice. They taught her that silence can be chosen, but it should never be forced. Vera's story didn't end with heartbreak. It expanded beyond it. It became a story of self-discovery, quiet courage, and renewal. A reminder that even when someone underestimates you, even when they believe you are unaware or weak, your strength can grow unnoticed, until the moment it matters most. And perhaps that was the greatest truth of all. Sometimes, life doesn't break you to punish you. Sometimes, it breaks you to free you.